All right, everyone, welcome to Book 4, Unit 7, Grammar Presentation Number 2. What you need to know: what is a modal verb, what is a base verb, what is advice, and what is necessity. Today we study should, ought to, have to, meanings, positive and negative, and questions. All right, take 1 minute, read over this slide, and then we'll go over it together. All right. What is a modal verb? Modal verbs go with the base verb. They change the meaning of the verb. Remember, modals have different jobs. Today's job: statements of advice and necessity. Advice: good idea to do or good idea not to do. Necessity: you must do it. Non-necessity: you can choose. Okay. Take a few seconds here, look over this slide, and then we will go over it together. All right. Should and ought to, advice. It is a good idea to listen to advice, but you can choose. Subject plus should plus the base verb. This is your formula here. Remember about this when I talk about our grammar. This is your formula, how you're going to make sentences when you write them and how you're going to form sentences when you speak them. Subject plus ought to plus base verb. Remember your formulas. How do you do this? He should say thank you. He ought to say thank you. They should be on time. They ought to be on time. Okay, again, take a minute, read over this page, and then we'll go over it together. All right, negative forms. Same thing, your formula here. All right, how do we write this? How do we speak this? Subject plus should not plus base verb. Subject plus shouldn't plus base verb. Don't use ought to in negative sentence. Right? This is a key here. Do not use ought to in negative sentences. If you see ought to in the negative sentence, that's telling you that is a wrong answer on the test. Okay? You should not say bad words. You shouldn't say bad words. They should not cut class. They shouldn't cut class. All right, next slide. Again, take a minute, read over it, and then we'll go over it together. Okay. Have to is a necessity. You have no choice. If you don't do it, there will be problems. Subject plus have or has plus to plus the base verb. So subject have to base verb, subject has to base verb. All right. You have to bring your KFU ID to the final exam. She has to bring your KFU ID to the final exam. Now you have to think, when do I use have to? When do I use when do I use have, and when do I use has? You have to go back to your subject rules. All right, in previous grammar. Remember, grammar builds upon the last unit's grammar all the time. All right, there's things that you may need for the next part. So go back to your subject rules. Which subjects get have? Which subjects get has? All right. Don't have to, non-necessity. You can choose if you want to, okay? If you don't want to, no problem. Subject plus don't have to, doesn't have to, plus base verb. You don't have to bring your KFUIT to the Unit 7 exam. She doesn't have to bring her KFUID to the Unit 7 exam. All right? It's a non-necessity. But in your case, it's a necessity. All right? Next slide. Okay, I want you to take 2 minutes. Go through the slide, look at the formulas and our examples, and then we will go through this together. All right, let's go over our slide here. Questions of advice and necessity. Advice: only ask questions using should. Don't use ought to in questions. Okay, and again, let's start with our formulas here. How do we formulate a question or a sentence or a statement? All right. Should plus subject plus base verb. This is how you make the question. Now, how are you going to answer it? With either yes or no. Yes, comma, subject plus should. No, comma, subject plus shouldn't. Should I go to the English lounge? You're asking me as your teacher this question. Should I go to the English lounge? And I would say, yes, you should, or no, you shouldn't. Don't forget your comma here right after the yes or no, okay, when you're writing this. Should I study all weekend? Yes, you should. No, you shouldn't. Should he get married? Yes, he should. No, he shouldn't. All right. Necessity. Again, let's look at our formulas here. This is important. How are we writing questions and how are we formulating our answers? Do or does plus subject plus have to plus base verb. Now, when do I use do? When do I use does? Again, you need to go back to your previous grammar and you have to look at your subject rules. What goes, do goes with what subject, does goes with what subjects, all right? Okay, or do or does plus subject plus have to plus your base verb. Yes, comma, subject plus do or does. No, comma, subject plus don't or doesn't. All right. Do I have to do page 160 for homework? Yes, you do. No, you don't. Does she have to help her sister tonight? Yes, she does. No, she doesn't. Okay. Do they have to take a test on Thursday? Yes, they do. No, they don't. Good. So the key here is when you're using do or does, you need to go back and look at your subject rules and see which goes with which subject. Next slide. Okay, take a minute, review this slide, and then we'll go over it together, all right? Now make sure you're spending some time, look at this, because the next page, we're going to start to do some exercises. So you need to make sure you're clear on this before we start our exercises. All right, let's review. I, you, we, they, have to, don't have to. He, she, it, has to, doesn't have to. Now remember, this is what I was talking about with your subjects. Which subjects get have, which get do, which subject get have, which get does and doesn't, all right? Okay, so keep this in mind here. These are key. All right, so we've got positive, negative in the question when using should, ought to, and have. With should, positive is should. The negative, you can use the full two words, should not, or your contraction shouldn't. Question, should plus subject plus base verb. Ought to, only in the positive. So if you see it in the negative or the question, you're probably looking at a wrong answer or you're formulating your answer incorrectly. Okay. Have to and has to go with must. These are must things. All right. You must do or you must not do. Okay. In the negative, we're using don't have to or doesn't have to. In the negative, you have a choice with this. And here, as we are formulating our question, do plus subject plus have to plus base verb. Do plus subject plus has to plus base verb. When we say base, you know we're talking about the verb. All right, let's take a look at our next page where we're going to start to do exercises. All right, here you're going to change the questions to statements and statements to questions. So if it's a question, you change it and you make it a statement. If it's a statement, you make it a question. Okay, I'm going to give you 10 minutes to go through this. Okay, so take 10 minutes, go through, rewrite the sentences. Okay, if it's a question, you're going to now change it to a statement. If it's a statement, you're now going to change it to a question. So take 10 minutes, go through this. All right. Hopefully this wasn't too difficult. Let's check answers on this. All right. So, shouldn't we go to class today is a question. We shouldn't go to class today. Or we can say in the positive, we should go to class today. Hmm? Don't forget, we can change these into positive or negatives. Now, the statement is they have to study after school. Our question, do they have to study after school? He doesn't have to pay any bills this week. Does he have to pay any bills this week? Don't forget with does and do, right? We need to check our subjects, the subjects they go with, so we decide which one is the correct one. Okay, number 4. They don't have to worry about their grades. Do they have to worry about their grades? 5. Should we be scared? We should be scared, or we shouldn't be scared. 6. Does he have to study at home? He has to study at home. He doesn't have to study at home. 7. I should say something. Should I say something? Question. 8. He ought to take his time. Should he take his time? Okay. Why? Why should here and not ought? Remember, okay, do we use ought to in questions? No. Okay, and where was I? All right, 9. Where should we study? We should study in the library. Or you can put anywhere in there, all right? Because I'm asking a question, where should we study? When you're answering that question, we should study in our room, we should study in the library, okay? 10. Shouldn't he drive more carefully? He should drive more carefully. 11. She has to finish her homework. Does she have to finish her homework? And again, why have? Right? She does, she. All right? Don't forget our subjects. It tells us what goes next. All right. Now, we've got sentences and questions and statements, but they have problems. You need to go through, figure out where the problems are, and fix these. Okay? Fix the errors. Something is wrong with this, fix it. You're not rewriting. We've already rewritten from statements to questions and questions to statements. You're trying to fix this. All right? 10 minutes, and then we will check answers together. All right. Hopefully everyone was able to do find the errors here and correct our sentences and our questions. Let's go over our answers. Okay. We shouldn't have to say so much. Have. Okay. We shouldn't have to say so much. He should not to go there. He should not go there. No to. Does we has to do our homework? Do we have to do our homework? Do he should to get some sleep? Should he get some sleep? Does should he drive more carefully? Should he drive more carefully? We ought to not eat too much sugar. We should not eat too much sugar. She ought write her paper. She ought to write her paper. Doesn't he has to go to the home? Doesn't he have to go home? Should not he goes to school early? Should he go to school early? Has to he must get up early? Does he have to get up early? He doesn't has to give up smoking. Does he have to give up smoking? Should you act politely with your parents? Should you act politely with your parents? Now, this one, number 12. Oh, wait, this is good. What's wrong? Our punctuation. Now, where did we get all of these wrong statements and questions from? These come from you guys, from students. All right, these are ones that we've seen on tests or papers or examples in class. All right, so these are ones that you guys would make. So we must be careful here. All right, let's take it our next slide here. And again, we're going to continue to do more practice. Okay, modals of advice and necessity. These are incorrect. These are correct things. I want you to answer these 7 questions. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Go through, answer the 7 questions. All right, let's go over our answers. Okay. Do we use to with should, with ought, with have? We don't use to with should. We do use it with ought and have. Okay? Don't forget this. How do we negate should? All right? Negate means turn it into a negative, all right? We use shouldn't. How do we ask a question with should? Focusing on your formula. Should plus subject plus base verb. Number 4. Do we use ought in questions, in negations, or just say negative? What do we use instead? We don't use ought in questions or in negatives. All right? We use should instead. Okay. 5. Do we use to with have when have is a modal verb? Yes. How do we negate have to? Okay, we use don't and doesn't with have to. Okay, all right, we don't say have not to, have or have to not. We don't say that. How do we make a question with have to? Again, focus on your formula. Do or does plus subject plus have to plus base form of the verb. All right, let's look at our next slide. All right, and again, I've got some questions for you. All right, and you'll need to go back and take a look at the previous slide. All right, so take 5 minutes, go through this, and then we'll go over it together. All right, let's go over our answers. Which modal of advice doesn't use to? Should. Which modal of advice needs do to form questions and negatives? Have to. Which modal of advice do we avoid using in questions and negations or negatives? All right. Ought to. So make a yes no question from these sentences. You have to go now. So this is the answer. You need to make the question. Do you have to go now? I should watch that movie. Should I watch that movie? They ought to ask more questions. Should they ask more questions? Okay. Make a negative sentence from the same A, B, or C here in 8. All right. So now you need a negative sentence here. Do you have to go now? You don't have to go now. Should I watch that movie? I shouldn't watch that movie. Okay. Should they ask more questions? They shouldn't ask more questions. Next slide. Okay, let's do some practice here. 5 minutes, I want you to go through and pick the correct answer, and then we will go over these questions together. I'll give you about 4 minutes, okay? All right, let's check our answers. Number one, you really blank try weightlifting if you want to lose some weight. Ought to. You blank keep a regular sleep pattern each night. Otherwise, you will have problems with your sleep. Have to. Now, when you're looking for answers, you're trying to eliminate things. Okay? Now, with this, we know there's no should to. Okay, so you know C is a wrong answer. Ought, ought always goes ought to. So we know D is a wrong answer. So we have A and B as our choices. Now we look at our subject and decide, do we use have or has? This is where our subject rules come in. And this shows us what our correct answer is. So this is how you break down the sentence. If you're not sure, you've got to go back to those rules. All right, 3. You blank eat donuts for lunch every day. It is unhealthy. So you're saying not good. All right? So D, should not. Blank, do a quiz tomorrow. We're making a question. All right? Do you have to do a quiz tomorrow? Okay, blank, Sally go on a diet. Should. Okay. Why not ought to? We don't use ought to in questions. All right. Knife, blank, a special diet to control his diabetes. Has to. Okay. Now you've got 2 of them here. Don't go too quickly because there's not, remember, it's base form, not follows, base form. Remember our formula. Roseanne, blank, lose weight. She is an ideal body weight. Ought not to lose weight. All right. Okay, next question. All right, quiz time. Take a moment, go through here, and then we will check the answers together. I'll give you about 4 minutes to go through. All right, let's go over our answers. You blank use your phone and drive at the same time. Shouldn't. Okay? The doctor told him that he blank every day or he will die. Has to. You blank buy gifts for your friends if you don't want to. You do, right? You do. You don't have to buy gifts for your friends if you don't want to. People blank about their health. Should care about their health. And lastly, I can't see here. I blank study because I already understand everything. I don't have to study. Okay, that concludes our Book 4, Unit 7, Grammar Part 2. Oops. If you have any questions or you're still not sure of this, make sure you go back through the presentation and look it over.